Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Who do you have to get a drink around here?
You remember that dance we used to do at Fire Island? Man, that one's been so far back, I think I've forgotten it.
I remember it. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Oh, Christ.
Single, dip.
All right.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
Come up there, What?
This year's Pride celebration is commemorating the 40th anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion. And this week on Theater Talk, we're going to talk about the Boys in the Band, an equally important landmark in gay culture and gay awareness, which opened about a year and a half before Stonewall.
I've always loved the Boys in the Band, but it certainly generated its share of controversy over the years about its portrayal of gay people, its relevance to today in gay culture as well. We're going to discuss all those issues with a very interesting panel. Laurence Luckinbill was the original Hank in the original production of Boys in the Band off-Broadway, and a good friend of mine, and I'm happy that he's with us on Theater Talk. Welcome, Larry.
Thanks.
And our old friend Michael Musto, gay cultural commentator who is very opinionated on the subject of Boys in the Band. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you.
And a very, very special guest making his debut on Theater Talk, Mart Crowley, who wrote The Boys in the Band.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Very much.
Michael, to this issue of is The Boys in the Band still relevant? Is it dated? What do you say?
Absolutely not. The last revival I saw seemed as fresh as today's headlines because there are still the same issues facing the gay community. Every step at the table that you get, every right that you get, is accompanied by still fears, doubts, oppression, self-loathing, and this play really holds a spotlight up to people. And we can't be embarrassed for something for reflecting the time it was written in. This is a play with really waspish wit and characters kind of tearing each other apart, but in a way that shows their affinity for one another, their community, based on the fact that they're comfortable enough with each other to make these put-downs. And then it gets nasty halfway through. One of the characters gets drunk and forces them all to call the person that they first fell in love with. And it might be perceived as nasty the way I am when I out celebrities, but in a way he's forcing them to face their fears and face the truth. And Mart doesn't necessarily feel he wrote the play this way, but I see the ending of the play as a condemnation of the closet. So that's as fresh as you can get.
Mart, this question of the self-loathing, there's a documentary about Making the Boys, about the history of the play. And some of the people interviewed in that movie, including Edward Albee, say that they had issues with the play when it first came out, that it sort of had this idea of the self-hating homosexual. How do you respond to that kind of criticism?
Well, it definitely does have that image of it. The leading character you can't defend him on that count at all. I don't think it's true of all the characters, though, particularly the one that Larry played, who I think is about the bravest character in the play.
Yeah, who's left his wife for a man.
Yeah.
And has done it fully openly and with great courage faced what that would do to his family. And so that it was it's always been a change, a life changer for gay men who come up to me all the time. I wouldn't say every single day, but at least twice a year. Somebody will say, "Hank changed my life," meaning that specifically that when they saw the movie or the play, they went home and were able to face their parents or their wife or someone else and say, "Look, I'm gay, this isn't working."
I want to ask you, Mart, this was the first play, openly gay play, right? Not a sort of, as they used to say, coded gay plays, or a famous New York Times essay by Stanley Kaufman, who said that, you know, a lot of the gay playwrights are writing coded gay plays. And is it not true that you read that Stanley Kaufman article, and Boys in the Band is a response to that?
Yes, it was the Stanley Kaufman article in the Sunday New York Times that I read.
And it said what?
What did it say?
Well, it took the three most famous playwrights of the day, did not name them. I think they could have got sued by them all if it had in that day, to say that they were all and the word wasn't gay then. I mean, that they were all homosexuals. And
We were talking about Tennessee Williams, William Inge,
and
Edward Albee.
Right.
yes.
Are they gay?
They're not going to sue. They're not going to sue.
The point of Kaufman's article was, and it also had been written about by Philip Roth, too, had written a scathing
that's right.
indictment of homosexual playwrights giving heterosexuals a bad name, you know, for their conduct. But Kaufman's article was, isn't it about time that one of these homosexual writers writes a play that's openly about his own experience? And I thought that was
a good point.
Very, very good point.
Did Kaufman like the play? Did he ever see the play and review it?
I don't really know. I don't think I ever met him. But
I met him. He did like the play.
Did he?
Yeah.
Good.
Michael, as a young gay man, when did you first come across Boys in the Band, and what was the impact on you?
I was already out. I was a full-fledged adult, and I wish I had seen it sooner because it spoke volumes to me about the fact that there was this gay community out there. I had no idea when I was sort of semi-closeted and not sure of my identity. It really would have helped me to know that there were these people who were out, created a world together based on love, hate, and all the kinds of things that straight people share as well. And when I did finally see it, it blew me away. Every line, it just screams at you from the screen. I mean, there's so much wit on display. All the characters are brilliant, because they're all from the pen of Mart Crowley.
I have to say, having seen the movie, I did not realize the number of lines in the culture that came from the Boys in the Band. I mean, you know, who do you have to bleep to get a drink around here? Which is a
like
line
a Betty Davis movie.
Exactly. I thought that was from, you know, a sort of a variation of a Betty Davis movie, and boom, there it is in Boys in the Band.
It had a great influence on me, too. I mean, it's not just necessarily the gay community, but I think many people struggling with some kind of self-loathing, with some kind of feeling of not belonging to the general mass, are moved by that play and relate to it.
Well, thank you. All I can say to that is I think one of the things it gets knocked for was that it appealed to a crossover
Yes,
audience.
I was one of those crossover people that you got indicted for. Right.
That, you know, some very cynical people said, oh, well, they're nothing there but a bunch of square, straight people, you know, who are laughing and relieved that they're not those people on the stage.
Oh, no, it's not relief. You're not those people. That you know you are those people.
My father's reaction, who was as straight as there is, a redneck from Arkansas, and he saw it with my mother. And I had I used to work as a stage carpenter, so I had bored a hole in the set so we could see who was sitting in row 6, you know, the middle of the row. And everybody fought now to get a shot at the peephole before we came on with the presents. And I don't know if you knew that, but anyway, I looked out that particular night, and there were my parents sitting in 6, you know, 102 and 103, whatever it was. And I really had a moment, because I knew what they were going to experience, what they were actually already experiencing, because we were off stage and it was already happening. And I just saw that when something really gay happened on the stage, and I forget what line it wasn't who do you have to bleep to get a drink around here, but it was something like that. And something about the hairspray can or something like that.
And also for you, something called control. Now, notice, nowhere on the label is it called hairspray, just simply control. And the words for men are written about 37 times all over the goddamn can. It's called Butch Assurance. It's still hairspray, no matter if they call it balls.
And my mother goes to my father, you know, with her little cloche and her wig. She goes like that, and he started to laugh.
Mart, when you were putting the play together, as the documentary has made clear in other interviews I've seen with you, you were kind of out of luck, right? I mean,
totally.
You were broke.
Broke.
You were drinking heavily, I believe. Unemployed.
Yeah, I had some good
So,
leads. So, I mean, you know, I had some reason to be depressed about being unemployed.
Except you were living in Splendor at the time you wrote the play.
Only because a friend of mine who was very wealthy was going on a vacation with her husband, and they had 4 children. And she had millions of servants, but they were all different nationalities. And she called me and said, look, if one of the kids falls down the stairs and breaks his neck, there's nobody here to call a doctor in English. So could you come over and stay for about 6 weeks until we get back? And so I immediately sublet my own apartment to a Hungarian actor who was in Hollywood to make a picture. And that was my income at that low point. And I moved into Diana Lynn Hall's house.
Yes.
The actress Diana Lynn from the 40s, who was in Preston Sturges' great movie, Miracle of Morgan's Creek. And her husband, Mortimer Hall, who was still very much alive, and his mother, Morty's mother, was Dolly Schiff, who owned the New York Post. So you can imagine what the house was like, and the servants. Totally broke, lying in bed, depressed, and then there's a knock on the door, and a butler brings breakfast on a tray and says that, you know, his wife would like to speak to me about what the menus were for the week, you know.
And that inspired you to write a play about a bunch of queens eating lasagna on the Upper East Side.
Well, it is a Preston Sturges movie.
Well, I'm curious about that, though, because did you... I also, you said this before, you were drinking heavily at the time because you were depressed. When you began to write the play, did it sort of give you a sense of purpose to your life?
Oh, yeah, well, actually, I never drank a drop.
When you
started writing,
really?
Yeah, no. It was... and Dinah had left me the keys to the wine cellar in this house. Morty didn't want me to have them. Morty, I have them. But I never drank. I didn't drink at all for the entire time that they were away, and that I started to...
How long did it take you to write it?
I wrote the play in 5 weeks, with the exception of the little tag between Michael and Donald at the end, just that resolution scene.
Interesting.
Had you been a mean drunk like Michael, the main character?
Yeah, I had, indeed, yeah.
Because it certainly is also a play about the results of being a mean drunk. Yeah.
I want to talk about that original cast, Michael, because in the movie, which is so rare to have a movie made that uses the original cast, usually you all get replaced by bigger names. I mean, a phenomenal array of actors. If you could just sort of sketch in each of those actors for us a little bit, what you admire about those performances.
And Mart was under pressure to use big Hollywood names and stuck to his guns and stuck with the original cast. That's why the movie, which is directed by William Friedkin, is so good. But obviously Larry is brilliant. Leonard Frey is magnificent as Harold.
The pockmarked Jew fairy.
32-year-old.
Ugly, pockmarked Jew fairy.
Pockmarked Jew fairy. He went on to win an Oscar nomination for Fiddler on the Roof, of all things.
The next year.
So it didn't ruin careers. Robert Letourneau played the dumb hustler.
Cowboy, yeah.
In real life, he was a conflicted hustler who died tragically. Cliff Gorman is the screaming queen, Emery, and everyone thought he was so convincing they were sure he was gay, and he wasn't, right?
No, not at all.
Did Dominic Dunn have something to do with this?
Well, Dominic Dunn was the executive producer of the film.
Kenneth Nelson is fantastic as Michael, the host of the party, who gets a little too tipsy. He went on to win a Golden Globe Award for Best Newcomer. He was the original star of the Fantastics.
Yeah,
right, that's right.
So talk about range.
Peter White, who is living in California now and working in California as an actor, and I'm sorry he can't be with us today.
And Frederick Combs, who played Michael's best friend.
The late Keith Prentice as Hank's lover. And Reuben Green.
And Reuben Green, who alas
still alive, but we don't know where he is.
We hope he is. I mean, there's no record of his dying in any of the Variety or the Hollywood Reporter or any of those things, the New York Times.
We don't know much about Reuben, whether he was gay or not or anything.
I don't think Reuben was at all.
I don't either.
No, not from all the things that happened.
Like children he fathered, right?
And whenever they do a production of Boys in the Band in Japan, the Reuben Green part is played by a Korean.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Whatever.
Larry, what was it like? You were a heterosexual actor, beginning of your career, to have a script about playing gay people land on your agent's desk. I mean, were you encouraged to do this play?
I was not encouraged to do it. I was discouraged to do it. But I'm going to head this thing with saying it changed my life and did nothing but good for me and for everybody in the play. I think that could be debated with Bob Letourneau and some others that perhaps misconstrued what might happen to them after the play. But the play was such a huge hit, and we were so embedded in the culture that it got me a two-picture deal with Otto Preminger, which promptly eroded when I went on David Frost and told about what Otto was really like on set,
Oh,
which
dear.
was, it was an exercise in sadomasochism. But no, my agent, who also represented the play, and Mart, said, "Don't do this. It'll wreck your career." And I said, "But it's a good play, and it's by a friend of mine."
Oh, you knew Mart?
Oh, yes. Oh,
We
yeah,
went to school together.
went to school.
Oh, of course, I understand.
Catholic University of America.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So she said, don't do it, but you...
Yeah, I said, "I'm sorry if it does something to our relationship, but I'm doing it because it's a good play." And then I proceeded to tell Mart and Chuck Guinness and Bob Moore that I wanted to play Michael, and then I wanted to play Harold, and I wanted to play every other part.
Oh,
They
the
kept saying,
flamboyant.
No, you're Hank. You're Hank.
But did you, I know you got the Otto Preminger films, but did you lose any jobs at all as your agent?
Yes, I did. I lost a job. I lost something.
Cigarette commercial.
A cigarette
yes.
commercial. I was the man from True. I was the cigarette to True man. I smoked a cigarette extreme close up, and I didn't even smoke cigarettes. But the casting director, who was gay and a wonderful guy and a very smart guy, called me up one day and he said, "I want you to come in and read for the new series of commercials, but I don't know if it's going to work." And I said, "Well, okay, that's fine. It was just a commercial, I didn't really care." And I came in and read for this array of clients who were there from True Cigarettes, and at the end, thank you, and my friend and I looked at each other, and I left, and he called me up about a half hour later, and he said, "You're not going to believe this. They don't want you to go on with this." I'd already done like a year of commercials. "They don't want you to go on with this." And I said, "What's the reason?" He said, "Well, the reason they give is that no fag smokes our fags."
Oh,
And I said, "Well, at least it's kind of funny."
Was there concern on the part of any other cast members when they first started doing Boys in the Band about what the impact would be on their careers?
Well, I think if Peter White were here, he could address that quite...
What would he say, do you think?
Well, he was very torn, wasn't he, Larry,
was
about
torn.
whether to do it or not.
And he was warned not to.
Yeah, and he was warned not to, and he did do it. And he says he has no regrets.
I was on a soap opera. I was on All My Children for a long time, and I left that. And there was the head of casting over at Disney. He said, "You've got to take this off your resume if you want to work in this town," which was Boys in the Band. And I said, "I won't take it off my resume." He said, "Well, you're going to have a hard time getting a job out here."
Cliff Gorman became kind of a star out of it for a while.
Yeah, and he wasn't the first choice. Do you remember that? Do you
No,
remember?
I didn't.
Yeah, Bill Hickey was cast.
Really?
Oh,
Hickey, right.
really?
Yeah, but who was a terrific actor, of course, and I don't think it's telling any stories out of school that he had a problem with addiction, because he was always, struggling and losing parts and not being hired because of it. And after he auditioned, got the part, we only had a week to get it up, the play at the workshop production, and he didn't show up for rehearsal the first day. And then when he didn't come the second day, the director, Robert Moore, said to me, "We just can't. We've got to go with somebody else." Who was that guy that was so over the top that came in? And we looked down the list, and it was Cliff Gorman. So call him quick.
Wow.
Michael, we just have a few minutes left, but aside from the sort of cultural impact, the lasting impact, what is it about just the play itself that makes it so much fun for you?
Well, it is an important play. It's the gay raisin in the sun. It's the first play to put our life out there, and what's so fun about it is the crackling dialogue, the way each actor fits his part so brilliantly. I studied with William Hickey. I don't see him as Emery, so I'm sort of glad he didn't. I'm glad he didn't show up. But, and by the way, if you think things have changed so much, I've lost ad campaigns recently for being who I am, so nothing has changed. Yeah, but that's a whole other
nothing
show.
has changed.
It's just the second it starts with them doing. First of all, the scenes in the movie of New York at that era are fascinating documentary footage. But then once they get together for this party, and we should say the premise of the play is Michael is throwing a party for Harold and is gifting him with a hustler, and that's all you need to know.
Yeah. But his straight friend shows up.
And his straight friend shows up, and there's little antagonism going on. But once they start doing a conga and drinking the punch and eating the lasagna and tearing each other down, it's riveting. It's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf meets, you know, killing his sister George.
Well, I was going to ask you that, because you do say that Edward's play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, actually influenced you a lot. And I'm sort of interested in this notion in both plays of a kind of have a group of people together, have a party, and then let them lacerate at each other. Are these the kind of parties that went on back in the day? Because I've never been to a party where people play a game of Get the Guests. Were these real sorts of things that happened socially?
I don't know if it was that sustained or not, but I personally, you know, had very terrible behavior. I don't know why it was tolerated. Sometimes when I would go off at a party and insult somebody, you know, names aside who they were and what the reasons were for, but you know, it broke 2 or 3
No, there are
friendships,
people, if you drink enough gin or whiskey, that happens.
Who
Yes.
are pretty much
thing, though.
known for that. I mean, there's still some, you know.
I used to call it the homosexual home of the brave, which is, you
Arthur
know,
Lawrence's
we're
play.
all in the foxhole together, and there's a war going on, and all those people out there are trying to get us. And there's the black guy, and there's the extreme gay guy, and there's the this guy and that guy, there's the Jew. You know, it's like one of those movies, the World War II movies, where every genre was representative, who America was. And I used to say that to people, and they'd say, yeah, you're right. It's like everybody, they're all like regular guys, aren't they? And I said, yes, they are. They're all like ordinary people. And that was the killer, that people could come into the theater and see a bunch of people that they would recognize on the street or recognize in their job or who taught them, and they're gay, and that's their background. That's what they're living with. So accept them.
Yeah.
Was the
And they all love each other.
And they all really love each other.
Yes, not to get too sentimental about it, but I mean, I was talking to a producer who's interested in reviving it, who says for him what still moves him about it is that despite the laceration to each other, that at the end, when Harold has devastated Michael, he says,
Oh, Michael, thanks for the laughs. Call you tomorrow.
they are a family of sorts, are they not?
Oh yeah, that bond is not broken even by the outrageous behavior. The last line of the play is, well, Harold's last line in the play is "Call you tomorrow."
And doesn't Harold say that in your sequel as well?
Yeah, it's the last line in the sequel, which I don't know if we've mentioned it here.
What is the sequel called?
The sequel is called "The Men from the Boys," and it was written and performed in 2002. It was done in San Francisco and in L.A. But it's never been done in New York, and we were hoping before the economic crisis that this November there's a theater group off-Broadway in New York called the Transport Group, and they want to do the two plays in rep, which I think would be a terrific idea. Now they only have the money to do Boys again, and so I'm afraid that the second play may get dropped.
This is your chance to play Harold. Or Michael.
Carol Channing's got that
I
locked
told
up.
Mart what I want to play is a play that Bobby Drivus directed and starred in off-Broadway called A Breeze from the Gulf.
Yes.
It's his play, and it's a
Wonderful, yeah.
really wonderful play.
Yeah, Bobby Drivus was the star of that play, but it was directed by our friend and schoolmate Jack Going.
It's a fabulous play, in
Well,
my opinion.
We should say that you have an anthology of your plays coming out
Thank
in
you
the
for
fall.
saying that.
Which,
Yeah.
and the anthology is called?
The anthology is called The Collected Plays of Mart Crowley, I think. At least that's what it was the last time I looked, at the cover art even. November, and it represents my life between covers. 6 plays, and that sort of represents a lifetime of work for me.
We have
Great.
to wrap it up, but Michael, a final thought on Boys in the Band for young gay men who haven't seen it today and who don't know what life was like back then.
Your gay card will be revoked if you don't see this movie. You have to see it. Do not be ashamed of the gay past. It's very much connected with the gay present, and this movie will live forever, so you better catch up with it now.
And be sure to catch up with Creighton Roby's documentary, The Making of the Boys, which is out this fall, and fascinating. You're all in it. You're all in it. And the DVD of The Boys in the Band, which has some extras. You want to be sure to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to Michael Musto from The Village Voice, Larry Luckinbill, a fabulous actor, a good friend of ours, and Mart Crowley, who wrote The Boys in the Band.
Now it's my turn. And ready or not, Michael, here goes. You're a sad and pathetic man. You're a homosexual and you don't want to be. But there's nothing you can do to change it. Not all your prayers to your God. Not all the analysis you can buy in all the years you've got left to live. You may very well one day be able to know a heterosexual life, if you want it desperately enough, if you pursue it with the fervor with which you annihilate. But you'll always be homosexual as well. Always, Michael. Always. Until the day you die.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
Playbill Online is the official website of Theater Talk and the home of the Playbill Club, providing information and opportunities for theater lovers. We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.